should be a picture,
yes,
you know, about the state of the nation in Lesotho as you speak, from the way that you see it.
Well, that's a mouthful. Presently, Lesotho is undergoing multiple crises. Socio-economic crisis, financial crisis, and looks like also sitting on a cause of a political crisis. Political crisis that is associated with the dominant party within the four-party coalition government. You would know that we have had coalitions. This is the third coalition now we experiment with. We had one between 2012 and 2015,
yes,
and another one 2015-2017, and so this is the third coalition government. But at the heart of the crisis is a socio-economic crisis. You have a country that historically was structured as a labor reserve of South Africa, providing labor onto the mining industries of South Africa, into the farms, including even in the harbors. And when it is a result of mechanization of the mining industry in South Africa, all of those many generations of Lesotho men who would come onto South Africa found themselves thrown back into the country
without
opportunities of any decent livelihoods. I was at the rally in Welkom. I mentioned that 20-30 years ago, you had roughly 150,000 Lesotho men in the South African mining industry at any given time. But that number has shrunk to roughly 21,000 in this day and age. Now, where did we fail as a country? As mechanization was checking out manual labor, we did not reposition ourselves as a country to be able to absorb these people into some meaningful ways of earning a living. That gave birth to the spiraling of social crime. Politically, the state in Lesotho is the primary absorber, side by side with the textile industry, of manpower. And that was
the biggest employer.
It is the biggest employer, together with the textile industry. The result is that because the opportunities are so narrow, everyone tends to focus on getting closer to state power, the center of power and economic patronage. And that is the cause of the political crisis. You have political parties. I mean, Lesotho is a small country with just about 2.2 million people. But you have about 30 political parties.
So, out of proportion with the population.
Absolutely. If democracy was to be measured by the number of political parties,
then
does have
per
capita would be the most democratic country. But the trouble is, because of, amongst others, issues of governance within the state, within the political parties themselves, they keep breaking down all of the time. The result is that you don't have a single or two dominant parties in the landscape. That lends you readily onto coalition governments. By definition, anywhere in the world, coalition governments are not stable governments. But what is unique about Lesotho is that the fallout within coalition government has always happened as a result of splits within the dominant party within the coalition government.
Yes. Which is often the leader of that coalition.
Which is often the leader of that coalition. This is what happens between 2015 and 2017. The DC split within itself. And now you have the ABC caught up in its own quagmire with the huge prospects of the government being voted out of power. So you would notice from 2012 to 2015, you have a government that lasted barely 3 years. From 2015 to 2017, hardly 2 years. And now this one has just completed its second anniversary. And by it is tottering on the knees.
Let's pause there. I want you to tell me a little more about what the problem is that is about to make sure that this government may itself not be able to last long. Let's take a break now. We're talking to Ntate Nkosa Mahao, who is trying to make me understand what on earth is going on in Lesotho. Clearly, a little bit of political instability there, but we sum it up as a socio-economic crisis. Stay tuned for more conversation after this. My guest tonight on the Frank interview, just to try to understand the politics of Lesotho. As we are going to a break, we're talking about, in a sense, the fractures within the ABC. Tell me briefly about what on earth is going on there. Is it a power struggle? Is it something that could lead to a split? Or is it factional stuff that we see all over the continent in ruling parties?
You may choose to label it a power struggle. But put simply, the party had an elective conference.
Yes.
In February.
In February, yes.
And a new executive committee was elected.
Yes.
And what was very good with the outcome was that, as normally happens when you go for elections, you would have slates.
Yes.
And there were 4 slates. The members of the party forced a unity.
This sounds like the ANC Nazareth.
In the sense that they elected people from all the 4 slates.
And that's lumped you into one.
Yes, exactly.
Called the leadership collective.
Absolutely.
That's not one slated.
Exactly. Which was the most ideal thing that could have happened. But immediately after the outcome of the elections, some comrades lodged a case in the High Court, whereby they were alleging that the elections might have been rigged. That case checked on from February until this month, when eventually the court made a ruling that there was nothing wrong with the elections, and confirmed us as a newly elected collective of the ABC.
Does it mean that between February and now, that collective didn't take office?
It didn't take office because the old committee refused to
hand over power.
Yes, they refused to hand over the keys to the new committee, ostensibly because there was a pending court in the course of law. And there's a lot of things that happened there that are very strange, but let's not focus on that. Now, on the 10th of June, a panel of 3 judges made a ruling that the elections were run properly and a committee was elected. Lo and behold, the following day, 5 of us, myself as the deputy leader, the national chairperson, the general secretary, and the PRO and his deputy, gets served with show cause letters. Why you cannot be expelled from the party.
From the party.
Yes. And indeed, 3 days later, we're served with letters of expulsion. So yes, you style it as a power struggle. But for some of us, we see it as a manifestation of a very entrenched anti-democratic streak within the leadership of the party. That is all that it is. And so if there was ever any artificial reason why a party should either break down or cause a government to break down, this one would be a classical type.
Yeah. Now, after the expulsion of the 5 members, as you said, was this challenge in court? What is the status now?
Yes, indeed. First of all, we met as the newly elected National Executive Committee. But you must appreciate that at the time, we are already operating as 2 factions, more or less.
Yeah.
Some of the people that have been elected with us had decided to go along with the leader, who would not want to see us into office. So we met as the executive.
So the leader was re-elected, so he's actually part of the second,
yes,
the newly elected committee.
Yes, but he doesn't want to work with the newly elected committee. Yes. So we met, and in terms of the constitution, took a decision, because the constitution has a provision that says a leader may suspend members of the National Executive Committee.
Yes.
We had not invoked that particular clause, invoked another one.
Yeah.
But in terms of that one, the leader's decision is subject to ratification by the National Executive Committee.
Yes.
And so we took a decision that we are not ratifying this decision. And then we also applied to the High Court to interdict him against acting unconstitutionally. Now the court says this to us: you have a constitution that gives you power as the National Executive Committee to take any decision against any member, including the leader. But now you don't want to take that decision. You come to us as the court. Essentially, you are inviting the court to micromanage the affairs of the party. So we will not interdict him. We will not interdict him. You better go and exercise the authority conferred on you by the Constitution.
It sounds like a crisis.
The decision was absolutely correct. So we went back and suspended the leader pending disciplinary action. Because essentially what he is doing is to cause confusion in the party, fan sectarian tendencies within the party. And by the way, we have a provision in the Constitution that says anybody who obstructs the decision of the National Conference will be deemed to have expelled himself from the party. We haven't gone that far. But to the extent that our election was a decision of the National Conference, standing against it means that he was standing against a provision.
So it is suspended as you speak, as a leader, but not as Prime Minister.
No, as a leader, pending 2 things that are likely to happen. The one would be a disciplinary action. A disciplinary tribunal is being constituted presently. But also we have called a special national conference this coming Saturday to be seized with all of these troubles that have been bedefiling the party in the last 5 to 6 months.
So this conference is being called by the new, the new national executive.
Exactly. Yes.
And in your estimation, it will be well attended by people from across. Remember, you painted the picture of how the conference was able to elect people from different factions, for lack of a better way, right? So this coming conference, will it be seen as a factional conference, or do you believe that it would encompass everyone?
By the way, the Constitution says 2 things. The National Executive Committee can, on its own accord, call a special conference when circumstances do warrant. Alternatively, the constituencies themselves can actually write to the National Executive Committee to call a special conference. In this particular case, we had letters from the constituencies up to, I think the last time I counted, over 50 constituencies had written to us demanding a special conference. And so we have, all in all, 80 constituencies in the country. And then you have constituencies here in South Africa. Mm-hmm. So you already have over 50% of the constituencies demanding that we host a national conference.
Mm-hmm. And what do you envisage as the outcomes of such a conference? When you are discussing the national executive, what do you want to achieve with this? Because you've got a process, a legal process, that is just described. Yeah. You've got a disciplinary process, another new process now.
That's right.
Dealing with the leader.
That's right.
And now you're calling a special conference. Are these things going to be a culmination into the national conference, or they'll still run as parallel processes?
We cannot prejudge. The special conference is supposed to pronounce itself as to what should happen. And because these are the proprietors of the party, they're at liberty to pronounce the direction. We will be at their total mercy to determine the way forward.
So, you're summing it up as a crisis. When you're in a situation where a leader, who's also the prime minister,
yes,
is suspended, right? It means that if he's exercising his powers as prime minister now, it's not with the blessings of the party.
I would not say that, because as you know, ours is a parliamentary system. A prime minister is a prime minister at the behest of parliament. In other words, it means for as long as there is a majority of members of the National Assembly that support him, then he's sitting tightly.
Regardless of whether his party send him to parliament.
But if, as we suspected, there is a split right down the middle of the ruling party in parliament, then it might well mean that he no longer has the support of the majority in parliament. Because remember that we have 120 seats in the National Assembly. The ABC commands 53 of those seats.
Yeah.
Not enough to command a majority. We should be 61, and the other side of 61.
Yes.
Now, if of the 53, some of the members of parliament already indicate that they don't support the prime minister, that means that you have now a very serious crisis. That may well point at the possibility of a change of government, or even of an election.
Yeah. Carmen, what's happening on social media there as we continue this conversation?
Thank you so much, AJ. Let's start with a question coming in from WhatsApp here. Please will say, I'd like the Prof to elaborate clearly what his vision is as a leader to save Lesotho.
Okay.
Seputuri here from Cape Town saying, over and above all, it's about time we leave academics to run this country. We have chosen leadership based on emotions for a long time, and the first time we've used common sense and a thorough analysis to elect the current leadership. All the best there, wishing the Prof all the best for the future. Circle here saying, as a student in the University of Cape Town, I want to know how the professor is advocating for change in Lesotho without engaging with the youth. How then does he betray the youth at the National University of Lesotho as the Vice-Chancellor and then expect the same youth to trust him as their leader? Let's take a look at our final WhatsApp for now. They're saying, respect the will of the party members and stop being a dictator. We voted for who we want to lead us. You must respect us or step down. JJ, on that note, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Carmen. You know, the whole issue, I can hear all that you are saying in terms of the crisis and so on. And as you zone in, you can see the crisis that clearly has its genesis inside the party. And now it's going to affect the whole country. And one of the questions is to say, what is the vision for the country? You have been around long enough to know, and you have described the process where government lasts 2 years, 3 years. I mean, by the time they get to the end of their term, they are just still in orientation, and then a new set of guys come in, and so on. So it's been, easily been described as quite inconsistent a state of matters where governance is concerned. How can this be resolved? What is the vision that you have?
JJ, I earlier on alluded to the challenges of governance. And the challenges of government revolve around a couple of issues. Lack of vision on the part of that is why when all of the developments that have been happening in the global political economy, we as a country have not been able to reposition ourselves accordingly. That says that there's been a problem of vision. In fact, let me just say to you that in 2000, we are now in 2019, almost 20 years since we adopted that vision. But if you look at all indices of the country, we are worse off than we were in 2000.
When you adopted the vision?
When we adopted the vision. That speaks to what? Lack of implementation, follow through. And so you may have those nice plans, but if you don't have the capacity to see them through, then it is as good as you don't have them. That is another. The other problem is one of lack of accountability on the part of our leaders. You would have seen from the social media there someone saying, our leader must respect the decisions of the members. Members of this party voted a committee in large numbers, but the leader has decided to go along with those who lost because he was backing a faction within the first lady that I mentioned. And those folks lost territory. And because there is no tradition of the leaders being made accountable, there you have a situation where the leader simply says, I don't want to work with those folks. How can you possibly have that in a democracy? If you don't respect democracy in your own party, how can you possibly be trusted with respecting democracy
in the country?
In the country.
Yeah. But what are the relationships? Because at the end of the day, all these things can boil down to relationships. What is your relationship with Tawani? I mean, before the elections themselves, where you pull us apart in different factions, and have you since February try to sit down to see how best you can resolve what clearly as a matter that dragged out. I mean, I wasn't aware it was a matter that was in court for 4 months, or no, more than 5 months.
Sometime in November, out of blues, he convenes a rally and start berating and vilifying at the rally. And that puzzled everyone, because we were heading for a national conference where the Constitution says the members must freely elect those they deem competent to can lead them. And so, after the elections, look at what he does. He fires 2 ministers. One of them, interestingly enough, his own son-in-law, who had been elected the General Secretary of the party.
But was a minister.
Was a minister.
Shouldn't have been a minister in the first place, he was son-in-law.
Well, he's a politician in his own right.
I see.
He's a politician in his own right. Now, he fires him. The other minister whom he fires got the second highest vote of all of the votes
in the conference.
In the conference. What does that say? The members are actually saying, we are affirming these people. They must have done the right things in government for them to be voted. People confirm the people, the leaders, and then you fire them. He also was the vice chancellor of the university. He then sends a letter to police asking His Majesty as Chancellor, directing him to fire me as a Vice Chancellor. I see one of the students there says that I betrayed the youth. He must be living in his own world. The students at the National University of Lesotho hold me in the highest esteem because of what I've done in the last 5 years as a Vice Chancellor. So I don't know where that comes from. In fact, people who trusted me into politics said you have done an excellent job to turn around a university that was in the doldrums. Why don't you come and apply your talents at the national level, particularly when we have these very patent challenges.
Yeah, but bottom line that you are telling me is that the relationship has collapsed. In other words, you don't see a future at the moment that includes Thabane. I mean, if we put it bluntly now, about what needs to be done to fix things, because in your country, like in any other country, there's a need for some bold decisions to be taken for situations to stabilize. Clearly, there is a lot of instability. Do you think that stability could be brought back by the further building of bridges, or is time just cut your losses and be able to just focus on ensuring that there's a brand new leadership that comes in?
In politics, they say never say never. As far as I'm concerned, I have had no challenges with the Prime Minister and the leader of the country. No personal clashes whatsoever in my entire life. As a matter of fact, when he was in Fixback, in exile, 2 years ago, he says to members of the party, guys, I am tired. Begin to look for younger folks who will support me. And he specifically mentions 2 people. Look between Mahao and Majoro. Even today, here in Johannesburg, somebody was saying, he said that to me.
Mm.
So what has since happened? I don't know.
You think it was not a genuine call?
I think it was.
And a genuine
I think it was.
desire to have a proper succession plan?
I think it was. I think it was. Everyone believes that it was, Jenny. But then we have a unique situation, JJ, in the party and in government. The leader of the party, the de jure leader of the party, is not necessarily the de facto holder of power in the party and in government.
Mm.
His spouse happens to be.
Sure.
We have a slightly worse situation than you had north of the Limpopo.
In Zimbabwe. Yeah.
The Grace Mugabe
scenario. Yeah.
Yes. So it doesn't matter what the leader may want. If his wife says it won't happen, it sure will not happen.
Mm.
She is singularly the most powerful person in that country. Allegedly, she appoints ministers and fires them, appoints top civil servants, and interferes in virtually every senior.
Yeah, physically herself or through influence of the Prime Minister.
Sometimes directly.
Sometimes directly.
Yes.
My goodness.
Yes, sometimes directly. Most of the time through the leader and the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So, what the party membership believes is that the antipathy towards our committee is not necessarily that of the leader, but of his wife.
Mm.
And so that is where you have an unusual constitutional challenge that you wouldn't find in any constitutional manual.
Yeah.
Because this person is not part of
not holding a constitutional
it's
role
part of the institutional authority within the party and within the government. But for goodness sake, she is in charge.
If people are watching from Lesotho and from here who care about your country, as we close now, what is your message to them? What are the 2 or 3 things that one must leave this conversation with about how you intend to fix? What is clearly a very crisis-ridden situation?
You know, our collective efforts and my personal efforts have been to try to build bridges. I've found my way to get into State House and sat with the leader and said that let's sort out these things for the sake of the unity of the party. Because here is a challenge, JJ. Our party garnered 40% of electoral support during the last elections. If it were to split, assume it splits into 50-50, then we sure lose government. Other parties would sneak through, and they would be the dominant parties in government. So these shenanigans, this refusal to accept democracy within the party, is leading to where this party of choice for 40% of the voters of Lesotho will lose power. If that is not bad enough in itself as a prospect, there is this imminent reality that government may collapse anytime. In fact, government ran away from an imminent vote of no confidence in Parliament by shutting down Parliament the sine die a couple of weeks ago. That motion is still waiting for Parliament to reopen. And so anything can happen. And if it does, look, Lesotho are fatigued of going for elections every 2 years.
But must they,
The region,
should they lose hope? Should Lesotho lose hope, though? At the way things are looking.
I'll tell you, the expectations in 2017 were so high. But the despondency, the demoralization that has happened because of this artificial crisis within the ABC is such that we suspect if you're going to have elections around the corner, fewer than 40% of the electorate will turn up at the ballot boxes. Essentially expressing their lack of confidence with the entire political system. And once you begin to have those numbers dropping low and low, then democracy itself is in crisis. And that is not the route we want to go. So you're asking me about my vision.
Yes.
In the short term, the vision is to help the ABC fix its internal problems.
And hopefully that could wrap into the whole governance of the country.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to leave it there, Prof. But thanks so much for coming through and talking to us. We wish you well in getting things right in Lesotho, and we hope you'll be back just to give us an update maybe a few months down the line from now to see what has happened and whether or not things are getting better. But otherwise, thank you and we wish you well, Prof.
Thank you so much indeed for having us here.
All right.
Although it is very late in the night, I normally would be sleeping at this time.
Don't worry, a lot of people watching you. Professor Mahao there in Lesotho. Quite concerning. You can, of course, follow our show on #YourView on 405. Tell us what you think. Maybe you're watching us from Lesotho or you're watching us from here, but you are interested in what is happening in Lesotho. Share your views. Continue to do so on social media platforms. But by the way, today, the best day of one